in public preview. Mostly I will be like, if you know a little bit about Portal, you will see the difference that this feature makes in the portal. But I will try my best to give you why we need it, and what problems it solves. So first of all, thanks to the sponsors and my colleagues and organizers of this event. A little bit about me. I work currently as an independent consultant at my small one-person company, and I work with Power Platform and Dynamics 365 and Azure. I write occasionally some blogs on my transform365.blog if you are interested to read there. I normally log about technical things there. Also, you can reach me on Twitter and LinkedIn. So I have two main objectives for this presentation. Is how to build better portal solutions and show the power of WebAPI. So the reason, like if you're like me and working as a developer in this platform, you know, like any other platform, it has limitations. And the hardest thing is to answer a client when he asks for, can this platform be like enough for our complex needs now and in the future? You can't answer all of their questions, but when a feature like WebAPI or integration with Azure Service Bus or Azure Aware plugins, when these features come into place, they make the platform way stronger because there is no limit to what you can do, right? So I like these features. They solve limits of the platform. They make clients happier. So that's why I chose this topic today. Before we start, again, this is a preview feature. It's public preview, and in a few weeks, hopefully, the promise is to be general availability. Your portal version must be above this 9.2.641. If you are on a regular update cycle, your portal should be 9.3, which is good enough. This feature is about data. It's not like the Web API for Dataverse in the backend, where you can also query metadata. It's only about data here, like contacts, accounts, leads. And there is a few enhancements coming in Wave 1 of 2021. So it's good that we are seeing some traction here, that Microsoft keeps updating and adding features here. I am not a front-end developer, so whatever you see from small designs that I would have in the demo, it's just things I did in HTML, CSS, jQuery, but I'm sure many of you, they are way better than me in developing nicer interfaces. The point for me was to show like the Web API in action, so I didn't spend much time on making things really beautiful. So the agenda for this presentation, I will go quickly over the history of the portal and the create, read, update, delete functionalities that currently exist in the portals, and what we couldn't do before versus what we can do now with the Web API. I will introduce the Web API, the operation syntax for it, a couple of helpful tools, and 4 or 5 small demos to showcase the Web API. So if you worked in the portal since its beginning, it was called ajax Studio. And it was a full CDS content management system that's actually you have access to the whole code behind, written in C# and ASP.NET. At that time, things were great because you could do whatever you want. You can customize whatever you want. You can write C#. You can call actually the Web API. The Web API is not a new feature. It was in the ajax Studio, but it's not. After ajax Studio became Dynamics 365 portal, it just disappeared because we don't have access to the code behind. So you host this portal. It's still available on GitHub if you want it. It's open source, but it's deprecated. So Microsoft doesn't support it anymore. It just made it public for anyone to use if they want to, but it's not supported. So the better option for you is not to use it unless there is like a high necessity for that. Then when Microsoft bought the portal, it was called Dynamics 365 portal. Now the difference here is fully online. You don't provision it yourself. It is provisioned for you by Microsoft. And the big difference is the backend code is not accessible. So you only can do JavaScript, Liquid, and the CSS, HTML for customizations. Then, with the Power Apps introduction, the portal itself became a Power App. Of course, a different type, but it is a Power App at the end. The difference between the second and third one is the second one, you had to have a Dynamics 365 instance, like an application like customer service or marketing, to have a portal. But now you can have it on a vanilla Dataverse, not CDS here. A vanilla CDS instance, you can provision a portal on top of it. In addition to Liquid, JavaScript, and HTML and CSS, we have the WebAPI now, which should add a lot of power, hopefully. So if you are familiar with the portal, there is like the built-in CRUD functionalities. We have entity forms where you can create, edit, or view a record. Entity list, as you can see in this screenshot here, where it's just a list of records where you can take actions in them. And web forms, where it's a multi-step process where you go like you want to submit an application, first step, second step, third step until you're done. And there is Liquid and Fetch XML to read only the data from the Dataverse. Those the existing ones. Now we get asked these questions a lot, like can we create or update records without those entity forms and web forms? The reason is entity forms or web forms, they are really good for a specific, like for a lot of cases, but clients always come up with new ways of creating and updating forms that they don't want them to look like entity forms and web forms. They ask for nicer feedback to those operations. Like when I update an entity form, I don't want the whole form to refresh. I want only, or the whole page to refresh. I want it in a modern style where I just click update and the page stands still and just the updates happen with a nicer feedback. Entityless experience, but with editable grids, for example. We cannot do that with the current functionality unless we use like some hacks of having APIs hosted somewhere else. And what if you want to use the React and Angular or the newer JS frameworks? Maybe you have team skills that they are really good at those things and you want to utilize them. Currently you can, but they are useless because you can't build a single page application or like multiple complex components in React, host them on the portal. But the fact that we did not have a service layer where we can call APIs makes this is not like very useful, right? And also, can we call an action from Dataverse? Not straightforward to call if you have some complex business logic and you want to call it with a click of a button from the portal. The business logic is executed in Dataverse, for example, in the shape of an action that does a lot of things. Now we can with the Web API. The user profile photo, which is an example I like because it's always there when you open the profile page, there is this container of your photo that should be working, but it's not. With the Web API, again, we should be able to do that. And whatever comes to mind that the current functionality doesn't fulfill. The limitation of the current ones is since the code is not accessible, they become opinionated by default, by definition, because this is how they are. Use them, or like you can play with JavaScript and DOM and CSS and Liquid to fit your needs, but this is a hack because if you want your entity form to look like something else, you need to play a lot with its JavaScript and CSS to make it look like that. It's not clean, it's not nice at the end, the code that's a result of this. Also, your team skills, as we mentioned, you may have like modern team skills that you want to utilize in the portal. They are you can hardly utilize them in the current portal without the API. So how we overcame those limitations in the portal? We normally don't actually, because we say no a lot to a lot of portal requirements because the portal can do few things well, but it can do a lot of things as well. One workaround we used to have is we host an API outside the portal, and we call that API from JavaScript to do what's needed. And with the introduction of Flow, Power Automate, that API thing became a little bit easier because you can host an HTTP flow and you can call it. But there is issues with that, the security, the API keys, they might be visible in JavaScript or in site settings that will be rendered in JavaScript. So it's not the most secure way. Also, you are dependent on, you need to maintain another application or an API outside your portal. It would be nice if things are in one place. So, introducing the Web API. The Web API is similar to the Web API in Dataverse. You can now create, update, delete, associate, and disassociate records with the Web API. Also, we can call entity-bound actions. Notice here we don't have a read. So, the Web API for Portal is still missing a read, mostly because Microsoft says like we have a way of retrieving data using fetch XML. And that's enough for now, but I will go over the workaround for read in a bit. It follows a simple syntax, and it has a couple of security layers, entity permissions that you mostly know. It's the same thing. You set up a permission for the entities you want to expose, plus few site settings that actually act as another layer of security for the entity you want to expose. Okay, so how to set it up? Everything, if you are using the right portal version, you just need to set up the entity permission as with any other data you set up there. And you need to set up 3 site settings, 2 mostly, but the third one is for developers. So let's say for a contact entity, I want to enable it for Web API. I say I add this site setting in the portal configuration where say Web API contact enabled is true. And you specify the fields you want to expose. Let's say you have the SIN number of the contact in your database, and you don't want to expose that like in any way on the portal. And even you don't want the Web API to have access to that. So you can specify only the fields you want, not this like the secretive fields or any field that you don't want to expose. Now, Microsoft calls this site settings fields, but it's not actually fields. A lot of things can go in here, which we will see in the demos. There is a third one. So when you are developing, if you want to see the errors in the developer console in the browser, you enable this site setting, and after you're done, you just disable it, just to say a little bit more detailed error. Other than these two, we have a small piece of code that provided by Microsoft. It's just a small helper Ajax function that we will put it somewhere in the portal, and we will give it the request, and it will execute it and return the results. I will go over it as well. So this is the helper Ajax function. You don't need if you're not familiar with this, you don't need to worry about it. You just copy this and paste it somewhere, as we will see soon. It just does one thing. It uses a shell.get token deferred. It's basically an internal built-in portal command that gets the token and puts it in a header of this request and sends it, and just gets the result back. There is nothing special about it, okay? And it becomes available as an object on the window level, which is called Web API. So when we call like a create request, we will call Web API.save Ajax with a post request, for example. Okay. So let's go to the syntax. If you want to create an entity, let's say you want to create an account. The most basic one is you issue a post request to this URL, which is portal URL underscore API accounts, and you provide it with a JSON. It's exactly similar to the OData in Dataverse. As an example code on the left side here, I'm calling that my Ajax helper Web API.save Ajax, and I'm providing it with post, the type of the request, the URL. I am interested in the accounts, and notice here we use the plural name of the entity, not the singular name, and content type JSON, and the data I want to provide for that account. So I can create an account with the name of sample account, and once this is created, it will return to me in the header with the entity ID of this new account. This is a very simplistic example. Look at the right side. We can provide this data instead of name. We can say, I want the name, plus I want to create a contact who is acting as a primary contact for that account with his first name and last name. Plus, I want to create an opportunity or multiple opportunities, because there is one-to-many relationship between account and opportunities, so we can create them here. Plus, for each opportunity, I want to create a task with this subject. This is what they call deep insert, where you can create this whole bunch of records in one call, which is really nice. It's atomic call, so if something fails in it, it will all fail, which is good. Which means, like, if you have really nice React form on the portal that creates all of these at once, you should be able to collect the account information, the opportunity information, the task information, all on one form, and click a button, and it will be all created for you. The update, we have two types of update. We have patch and a put, and the difference between them is patch is you update a record with multiple fields, and a put you specify the exact field you want to update. Assume that you, for example, you are on an editable grid and you want to edit a field on an editable grid row. You use put to edit that field specifically, okay? And you use patch if you want to edit the whole record. This is an example of a patch request. Same things, we specify the accounts and the account ID I want to edit, and you provide it with the JSON data that you want to update. Okay. Delete, we have a basic delete that deletes the whole record, and we have a delete that deletes a single property. Simple syntax, delete, you provide the account if you want to delete the whole account, and if you want to delete specific property, you just put the property at the end of the URL, like description. I want to clear out the description on that account record. A little bit more involved is how do you set lookups, how you remove lookups, how you set one-to-many relationships, and like in general, one-to-many and many-to-one relationships. We have the same things as you know in OData, and similar syntax where we use /ref if we want to add a reference to a collection value navigation property, like the many side of one-to-many. Or if we can delete those references, delete lookup, or delete the many side of one-to-many. Also, you can update with the same logic. Okay, so hopefully we'll come to many of these in the demos. Calling an action. This is a really cool feature where you set up an action in Dataverse. For now, it's just entity-bound actions supported. In Wave 1 of 2021, global actions will be supported as well. So what we see here is, because it's an entity-bound action, I just do this, like the URL as we saw before, contacts, I give it the contact ID, / you just put this Microsoft Dynamics CRM and the name, the logical name of the action. So I have an action here called subscribe from portal. And I just put the name here, and I provide, instead of now, because it's an action, the action takes input parameters. So I provide the data of, I have an input parameter called email, and I provide it as data. So what's not part of the WebAPI yet is non-entity bound actions coming soon. Clearing cache with WebAPI call, it's not supported yet. There is workarounds. If you follow Nick Dolman, he wrote a post about this recently. Is like a workaround to clear the cache on a specific record, not the whole portal cache. A Git operation, as we saw, it's not part of the WebAPI yet because Fetch XML is there, but Fetch XML is not as good. Because if you want to build responsive, let's say, single page component, single page application on top of the portal, you need a way to get without loading the page. Fetch XML only works on the load of the page, but there is a workaround. I will show as well in the demos. Also, it's only data, no metadata operations. So one thing I saw on LinkedIn from Victor Dantas. He said option sets. You know how we don't have support for multiple option sets, right? Or multi-select option sets. We can't actually come here and say, give me all the options for a specific option set so that I can render them, because this is metadata. And I think Victor is working on a solution using this and Flow together to build that. And also, what I didn't see in the documentation is there is no clear documentation on the limits or API limits. You know, like we have limits on how many Dataverse API we can make. I don't know how this applies to Portal, because this is pretty serious. And if your Portal has lots of audience, I don't know how Microsoft will deal with API limits. Hopefully, these things will be clarified when it becomes generally available. Okay, so I will go through a few demos. I'm done with the slides. I still have good time. So I'll just give a quick overview of the demos I will make. I will present. The first one is account selector. So I'm sure like many of you had this requirement in mind, where you want the contact to belong to multiple accounts on the portal, right? And for each account, they might have different web role. Like I can work as an IT consultant for company X, but I can work as I don't know, an accountant for company Y. Not proper web roles, but yeah, you get the idea. So a single contact can work for more than one account in the same time with different roles for each. And that is actually, you can do that currently with entity forms, but you need, let's say you need your entity form hosted somewhere in the header of the portal, and you don't want all the things that come with the entity form. You need to go and play with the DOM of entity form, remove things, use CSS, use JavaScript to remove anything you don't want, and maybe just have a select to drop down select to choose your account. It's a lot of work, and it's not actually straightforward because it's considered a hack. But with the web API, we can do it nicely. I will do some profile page improvements, like the photo of contact and auto-saving fields. We'll show the editable grid, quick create, wizard create without using entity forms and web forms. I will show you how we can call actions and the workaround on GET requests to make it look like that it's a web API call, but it's not actually. So let's go here and start. As you can see, I'm logged in as, just refresh, make sure I'm still logged in. This is a normal, simple portal. There is nothing special in it. And the first thing I want to put here is an account selector. You can see here on the right side, on the left top corner here, I put a placeholder called account selector widget. I want a widget where I can select the account I belong to. Before I do that, I'll show you in the solutions behind the scenes how I solve this problem. There might be many solutions, but for me, I created an entity called account contact assignment. Okay, and this entity is pretty simple. It has a lookup to the account, a lookup to the contact, and a lookup to the web role that this contact basically has in that specific account. Okay, nothing else. And this basically creates a many-to-many relationship between the contacts and accounts. So once I created this account contact assignments, on the contact form, I just added a new tab here called assignments, which says my contact, I work as an accountant for this company. I work as a lawyer for this company, and as a lawyer for this company. It's exactly the same entity I showed you. I just put in some records here, okay? And I also keep track of my current active assignment. So every time I change my assignment, this is the field that holds it. The reason I have this field is I have a couple of processes, as you can see here. There is one called assign contact web role on assignment change and unassigned contact web role on assignment change. And the reason is when I am assigned as an accountant for company X, I want to have the accountant web role. And once I change to another company as a lawyer, I want to have the lawyer web role, and I want my accountant web role removed. So these two workflows, they use like out of the box. Actually, I can show you. They use the portal assign web role and portal unassigned web role, just to remove the old web role and add the new web role. Pretty simple. Okay. So in this case here, I work for 3 companies as accountant, lawyer, and lawyer. Okay. Now let's go to the component I built for this. I have a web template called account selector. Okay, and in the account selector, initially, I have first I read all the assignments for me. I'm the logged in user on the portal, so I read using fetch XML what are my assignments, which companies I work for. Okay, and here I just there is a small HTML here where I just build a select element, and I list those assignments I got from the fetch XML into as options. There is a button that just says update account when I click on it. So what happens here when I click on an update account, I get that account ID, I get that contact ID. You see how I get them all in fetch XML so that I know which account I have to be assigned to and what role. So I create everything, then I call the web API save ajax. It's a patch request on the contacts entity with my user ID, which is the logged in user. The contact type, the content type is application JSON, and the data. Look here what I'm doing. So I am the parent customer ID underscore account is the parent account. This is the out of the box account field on the contact entity. The reason is I update this every time I change my assignment is that the whole portal is built on the definition that a contact has one account. I don't want to break that rule. I will keep it because, you know, if you go to entity permissions, for example, there is an account scope. It's something part of the product. So I will still assign the contact on that assignment, the account on that assignment to my parent account. So every time I change the assignment, parent account will change. And I will change the field called active assignments, the one I showed here. That will trigger the workflows for assigning the web roles and removing the web roles. So once I, on the success, I just like do some changes like from updating to update on the button and just, you can do whatever you want on the success of this page, okay? So let's see it in action. So in my case, I want to host this in the header of the portal. Before doing that, let me actually show you the site settings for this. You notice that I am updating the contact entity here. And if I go to site settings, there is this contact enabled. This is set to true, and there is contact fields. You will see here that I am putting all the things that the API is hitting as comma-separated names. Now, sometimes this is a field name, this is a field name, field name, field name, and field name, but this is not a field name. Look, it starts with a capital E. It's actually because I will be calling an action later. This is the input parameter of the action, which is called email. This is a relationship. This is a lookup. And this is a like schema name of a lookup. So it's not always logical field names. You can have more than fields in this one. Of course, I have also entity permissions set for the contact to allow editing like my contact record, like set to self, basically. Okay. So once I'm here, yeah, we finished this demo selector, and I will go to the header of the website. Okay, I have it commented here. I'll just include that web template I created in the header and save. Let's go here and refresh. Okay, you will see that the same 3 records you saw in the model-driven app. I work for Blue Yonder as an accountant, a Fabricam as a lawyer, and Fourth Coffee as a lawyer. Okay, so currently my parent account is Blue Yonder. So if I go to my cases, so I just put an entity list, a normal entity list, nothing special, that shows the cases for the account that I belong to. Currently, it's Blue Yonder cases, right? So let's go and change it to Fabricam and click update. Always the first call needs to build the cache. The first call of the web API is a bit slower, but after that, it's faster. So you will notice that once I change to Fabricam, I see Fabricam cases, okay? And notice something else. I am a lawyer. I see a legal page because I'm a lawyer. If I go back to accountant, I should see the accountant page because now I'm an accountant, okay? Which basically is a result of the web role change that I put in the backend, okay? So this is the first example. The second example is profile page improvements. The first one is pretty simple, this page, the same logic applies to any entity form you have on there. If you want to improve your entity form, say you want to auto-save the fields when they change, you don't want to click update and refresh the page and see that experience, I can say here, this. And just when the focus is out, it shows you saving, and it's saved actually, because if you want to make sure when I save, you see my last name here just saved, right? So I am calling the web API with a put request to update that single field. And the way I did this is like in the profile page, I just put a small JavaScript here, like get me all the inputs on this profile page that are not lookups, because I'm not currently interested in the text fields, and get me the field name, the field value of that text field, and just update that field. I also add a little span that says saving, if you noticed that when I focus out of the field. And in the update field, I just call the web API on that specific user ID or contact, which is the logged in user, and the field name I want to update. And when it's successful, I just remove that little span that says saving. Okay, so this is the result basically. The second improvement here is this profile picture. Okay, profile picture is another web template I built. So let's go contact image. Okay. Just a little bit of background in this. There is an already built-in field in the contact entity called entity image. It stores a byte array, okay? And you will see it here instead of your initials if there is an image uploaded in the model-driven app. But I want to expose that image on the portal. So I get that image byte array using fetch, and I just save it in a liquid variable called entity image bytes. Okay, I'm pretty optimistic here that it will get a record, but of course you need to do like more error checking. And I'm sure also it will get only one contact because I'm saying the contact ID equals the current logged in user. A little bit of HTML. I have an input that basically let me select a file from my disk to upload a new photo. And there is an upload button. If I click on it, it will upload, and a delete button. I want to clear the photo if I don't want it stored anymore. Okay, so let's start with the delete, the easiest one. So if I go at the very bottom here, there is this clear photo. I just make a delete request on the entity image. So I clear that field from the contact record. And once it's successful, I just optimistically clear out the image container in the portal. Okay, let's take a look quickly at the other things. So we have two main cases. When the page loads, you want your profile picture, whatever is stored in that verse, is to be viewed on the portal. This is where the load profile image takes place. So load profile image, first try to find that image container. Unfortunately, it doesn't have an ID of its own, so I had to use like some selectors to select it. I also just made the width and height 100%, so I wanted like a little bit bigger picture. And it takes the result of the fetch XML, the bytes, joins them comma separated string, and uses a function called BTOA. It's a built-in function in the browser that basically converts an image from byte array or binary comma separated binary characters into a base 64 string. And that base64 string, we can just feed it directly to the source of the profile image, and it will show. Okay. There is the other way around. If when I upload an image, it is a byte array. It's on my desk. I load it as a byte array. To save it in Dataverse, I have to convert it to base64 and save it. So this is the other function. It's not part of the demo just to go over like this encoding and decoding things, but you get the idea. I need to convert byte array to base64 and vice versa. Okay, so I built this, and let's see it in action again. So if I go to the profile photo, a profile page, and okay, let's see. Yeah, sorry here. Okay, so there is a little bit I commented out that include in the copy of the profile page. I'm just including that same web template you just saw. Okay, and here, let me refresh. So it should appear here. Okay, there is no image, but I see my HTML elements. Choose file and clear photo. So let's choose a file. Choose my photo and click upload. Okay, and just make sure, refresh the page, the photo should be there. And if I don't want it anymore, I just clear it. That's as easy as this. Okay, so this is second demo. Third demo is editable grids, quick create and wizard create. So I created an entity called complaints, and as you can, if you read the documentation about Portal APIs, I'm using the same editable grid Microsoft provided as an example. It's basically built with jQuery and HTML. It uses fetch XML to read whatever complaints I have access to and list them here. The first thing you see is that it's editable. So you can click on a specific field. It uses a put request to change that field specifically, okay, without loading the page. Also, you can delete also without loading the entity list itself for the page. A couple of additions I added to this is I want a quick complaint. Like if you have a React developer, they might build something way cooler than this, but I'm using just like vanilla HTML and CSS to build this. So let's say I want this, and I need for a quick complaint, I need a title and description, and I save it, it's there. If you go back to Dataverse, it will be there. Detailed complaint, on the other hand, is I tried to mimic a wizard-like complaint, okay? But my goal here, like this wizard is a plugin for jQuery. It's called Smart Wizard, I guess. I just plugged it in, and it just works. Description. And if I go next, I'll auto-populate my contact info, but like, of course, if you are submitting this on behalf of someone else, you can just submit it. I want to showcase the documents. So I want to upload an image as for this complaint. It's called water problem. And you will notice that in my case, my requirement is to put this image as a note on the record that I create. Okay, so I didn't save anything yet. I just click next and save. Okay, and I click finish. So once this is done, the detailed complaint comes here, takes me to this page. It is added. So if I go to advanced find the complaints, okay, you will see that the detailed complaint got created, and you will see that the image I uploaded is a note here. Okay. Now the way this is achieved is I'm using the deep insert, the one I talked about in the slides. And if I go into my web templates and the wizard, you will see that there is lots of HTML to build these wizards and stuff. But the main point for me is once I get the files from my desk, I convert them to base64 here. And when I do the actual web API call, I update that, I post a complaint with a name and the description and whatever like information we collected from the wizard. Plus, A51 complaint annotation is the navigational property name, basically, of the relationship between nodes and complaints. I just provide the nodes, which is a list of base 64 strings. Okay, it's as easy. So basically, this is how we create deep inserts, nodes in addition to complaints. Okay, so basically, if your creation of a complaint failed, the node won't be created, which is good because at least you don't have half-baked records there. Okay, the fourth thing I want to show is the action. So I have a simple action. It just here. It just have an input as an email called email. I want to subscribe this person on some list. Okay, this action creates an entity record called subscription. It has information about the email maybe of the subscribed user, but also you can add complex things here like, oh, and assign a task to the customer service agent to follow up with this person, or you can do whatever you can do in an action here. The reason I like actions is if you have complex business logic, you don't want to go and change the WebAPI code in the portal or ask a developer to change it. You may need to make your action expose specific input parameters and just change the logic here in the action itself. So it becomes more of a business user can do this instead of a developer, right? So the simply is, I just want to subscribe, provide my email, I click subscribe, and this one, as I showed in the slide, is actually executes the action behind the scenes and creates a record of subscription. Okay. Last thing I want to show is a GET request. Okay. So the way we used to do GET requests in the portal. Let me go to web templates. First web pages actually. We create, normally we do this. We create a custom page, a page. Where is it? Okay, we create a page that's not accessible, like it's not supposed to be viewable by other users. And we create a page template that holds a web template. So nothing like I don't use the website footer and header because this page is supposed to be a middle ground between me and the Dataverse, basically. So I create this, okay? This is well known, but I just made it a little bit more general so that you can use it with any other entity, okay? So as you can see here, if you know Liquid, I'm expecting that if whoever calling this page will provide me with these parameters, the entity name, like contact, the filter attribute name, filter attribute value, like I want the contact ID equals specific GUID, or I want first name equals specific first name, and attributes, like what attributes you want to retrieve from Dataverse, okay? All of these, I'm expecting them as a parameter in the query string. So what I do, like always, I use fetch XML. Fetch XML is the only way we can get information like this, okay? So I build the fetch XML, but with this, what this fetch XML is, it's general purpose. So it works for any entity, whatever you provided. It works for any attributes, whatever you provided. It also works with any single filter. So you can make this complex to have multiple filters, but for my case, I made it just a single filter. Okay. Then the results of this fetch XML, you just loop through them and build your JSON like object that will be returned. Okay, so how we use this is basically I built a small form to show you that we don't need to load the page to get information anymore. We provide those for parameters, and there is an actually I show you the web template where I built those things. So there is these 4 fields: entity name and filter value and filter name and the attributes. And instead of calling actually I can't call anything in the web API, but it looks like one here. I do a web API save ajax and I give it as a get, but the URL you see here is special. I call the custom get page that I created. I provide it with the parameters that are needed, and on the results here I just put them in a list just to show you in the table on the screen. So just since you saw this, I'm still calling web API.save ajax, the same helper actually Microsoft provided, but here I changed it a little bit. So this and this I added them. So if it's a GET request, forget about everything Microsoft gave us and just do this. Okay. The reason is I don't want to like this. If this works for web API, the actual one, but this path will work for this custom GET that I created, and that's why I said it looks like a web API call, but it's not actually a portal web API call. It's our custom web API call. Okay, so let's go here, and let's say I want the contact entity, first name and last name. Okay, if I click this, it will give me all the contacts that I have access to, their first name and last name. They are JSON objects. You can use them to build a grid or a table, whatever you want. That's why it doesn't look like it's a fetch XML, because it's kind of a wrapper on top of it, right? And if I say, I forgot to add a clear button here, so this refresh is just to clear this. Let's say I want incident, and I want the title of the incident, and I want the status code of the incident. I get it here. You can say, you can see that this is title and progress. Actually, refresh again to clear this. Contact, you can see here that if I say first name equal myself, okay, so this give me the contacts that their first name is Omar and just these two properties, okay, so I get only these. So this is how you make a GET request that fits into this whole thing, that you can make it work with modern experiences. I want to point a couple of things out. In XLM Toolbox, there is the metadata browser is pretty useful here, because you know all these field names and entity relationships and the single value navigation property of one to many, many to one. You can find them here for a specific entity. So it's good to take a look at this. Plus, those site settings, they can be hard to fill if you do, like, you either go to the metadata browser and find the attributes you want, their logical name or schema name, whatever, put them there. I built a portal helper, for example, Toolbox, that is still actually, I built it without full understanding of the web API. So it doesn't do everything yet, but it does simple things. Like, let's say, let me load the entities here. I want to enable the lead entity, okay, for web API. So I just select lead and I say enable for web API, and I want, you know, these fields to be enabled as well, and name. Okay, so if I save changes and I click OK, this one helps with creating those site settings. So enabled will be true and leads will have the things. So as you can, I think it has less fields than this. I know, actually 1, 2, 3, 6 fields here. I think I selected 6 here. Sometimes there are fields that are not accessible. Actually, yeah, same number. But sometimes there are fields that you can't create or update. So I remove them from the list of fields here. So might see different field numbers. Another addition here is I have a generate snippets. So this is the Ajax helper that I use. Plus, I show you a sample of create and update and delete. If you want to just copy paste these, and I also populate the entity logical name, the plural name, plus the fields you selected or the ones that are able to be created, so that you can, like, it might not do everything, but it's a quick start to create your site settings if you have lots of fields to include. What I found useful as well is Normally, when you start working with something complex, just make it like this, star, and make it work, then come back and remove the star and put the specific fields you want. So just to save time. Because sometimes like you hit your head with the table, why it's not working, and you have like missing a field here or something, right? So that's it, I think, and I'm happy to answer your questions.